Welcome to the new Cyber Frontier, bringing you the latest news and initiatives that focus on the development of cybersecurity economics. You don't have to be a computer or cybersecurity expert to get plugged in. Your host brings it straightforward, asks the tough questions, and brings the cyber world to a level of understanding for everyone. You can find us on the web at www.newcyberfrontier.com. Now join our host as he introduces the topic for today's new Cyber Frontier.
Here we go. Welcome to New Cyber Frontier. I'm your host, Tim Montgomery, and on this edition of New Cyber Frontier, we have Patrick Clawson. Patrick, we're going to let you introduce a little bit of yourself. I know we discussed in previous conversations some of the things you look at in growth, business entrepreneur, and you got 6 companies or had 6 companies, been in the industry for a long time, and cybersecurity is your cup of tea, right? So your expertise in the marketing field, and we're going to talk a little bit about API and where it sits and what kind of security factors will apply to that. Sounds like you've got a really good hold on how those things are working. So how are you doing, Patrick?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. So, yeah, it's more of a casual conversation a lot of times when we come to these podcasts. So it's kind of how I take things. So wouldn't mind introducing yourself a little bit about what you do and how you fit into cybersecurity, those types of things?
Sure. Again, Patrick Clawson. I'm currently chairman and CEO of an API security platform called Resurface Labs. I've been running cybersecurity companies for the last 21, 22 years. My first was a layer 7 firewalling company called CyberGuard, well known in banking and government and secure locations around the world. Took that company over. It was a NASDAQ company. We had to turn it around and clean it up, but we're able to move it from a $11 million company and a $9 million market cap to a $300 million exit 5 years later. So we grew that from around 11 in revenue to around 70. My next one was a venture-backed endpoint security company. So again, able to turn that one and get it growing. We grew in a completely different way, but we took it from around 12 million to 56 million in 5 or 6 years and sold that. I worked with British private equity, and we rolled up 4 companies and created the Blanco Technology Group and took that out on the AIM, which was really kind of the leader in data sanitization or data end of life. So a completely different vector. Then went into dark web monitoring with a company called Terbium Labs, which was venture backed out of the Boston area. We're able to turn that around and grow that company and sold it to Deloitte about a year and a half ago now. Now I'm enjoying and running Resurface Labs, which is a completely different aspect of security and a newer one called API Security.
API Security, yeah. We know that most things have gone to apps, and a lot of the projects that I seem to be on, we constantly are doing agile projects to use the applications in the cloud to produce interfaces and database centric type of applications for research and development. So, I mean, the marketplace is got, it's just trending pretty fast. So in security, though, oftentimes we look at what gaping holes that are possible in an API. I'm sure you've got a slew of elements that you guys define to make sure you're doing your best practices. What kind of factors do you guys run into in an API process?
So what kind of traction do we run into, or?
Yeah, so in your software development processes, when you create your API methods for developing something with an API module.
So here's what you should think about APIs in general. Back in around 2018, the different analyst groups started talking about the lack of security within APIs as APIs were starting to explode. And some of the third-party numbers, I think it was 2 years ago, Akamai said that 83% of all web traffic as of that point went through APIs. There was a similar Gartner statement last year that said only 11% of companies have done anything about securing them at this stage. They also had a couple other quotes. I think in 2021, they said that malicious traffic dwarfed legitimate API traffic for 21. In 22, they said it was the #1 attack vector. But still, businesses have not really done much to protect them. And the current technology platforms, whether XDRs or SOARs, don't really have visibility of what's going on inside those APIs. So companies like mine are born to provide exposure to really 3 major categories of risk. The first would be the OWASP top 10 for APIs. We need to make sure that we're compliant and not violating any of that. The second would be any of the known attack types taking place within APIs today, whether they're BOLA attacks or you name it. And then the third is what NIST regards as future attack surface. So they're more like anomalies, whether you have slow performing APIs, you've got bad code. So it's an observability. So you're protecting against the future, even though it may not be an active attack today, active attacks, and then anything that's outside or within the OWASP API top 10.
Awesome. We're going to take a break right now, Patrick, and listen to commercial from our sponsor. So we'll be right back with Patrick Clawson.
Blockframe technology offers next-generation blockchain-managed trust and security. Unique non-fungible tokens are used to secure software bills of materials to provide data quality and security for every transaction in your supply chain. Deploy advanced peer-to-peer product security, scale zero trust capability to millions of IoT devices, allow vendor tracking and accountability, and rapidly reset from compromise. Unchangeable, time-sequenced blockchain data provides next-generation security using machine learning trust algorithms and audit analytics. Start securing your supply chain today by contacting Blockframe at www.blockframetech.com.
Okay, we're back. It's NewCyberFrontier. I'm your host, Tim Montgomery. And today we're talking with Patrick Clawson. Gave us a little definition of his current company with the API modules and the attack vectors, and the statistics showing that only 11 or 12% are actually being covered. So this is one of the major factors in cybersecurity today for issues, risks. And so, and I'm guessing we'll get into a couple of questions with you about business and how businesses can launch for that type of stuff. But I can see where there should be marketplace for such a thing, because it's a whole, right, in cybersecurity. API is not being looked at, and they're using it more and more with development of applications and just the agile method that comes out of that. So, I mean, your company's, when did this company start? When did you start this one out of the 6 you've got?
It was founded by our CTO, Rob Dickinson, back in 2019.
Oh, okay. Okay, so you guys have been around quite a long time. And is this the only thing API-wise or in cybersecurity-wise that you guys cover for this type of company?
Yeah, look, Resurface Labs is a pure API security play. We address the market a little bit differently than others do. We approach it as a first-party only solution, and what that means is we stand up in the client's cloud environment. So we're cloud platform agnostic, but their data never leaves their own trusted environment. Competition seems to think that you're all right sending that data to a third-party platform, a third-party AWS SaaS platform. We do not. And a couple of things we do differently because of that. We're able to see all of their API traffic, all of the request and response data sets in totality, in runtime, unencrypted and unredacted. And we can only do that because it's in their environment. So we can provide runtime API security based on the totality of their traffic, not redacted traffic that's sent later to a third-party platform. But it also allows us to do something pretty cool. We can take that data that we're seeing and we can create a data lake of the last 30 days. So when we have a new zero-day attack that pops up, we're able to query our database very quickly, and it'll let you know if you've been impacted at all, and if so, which APIs, and sometimes down to the line of the code. So you can plan your remediation. It's not a mystery. Nobody else can do that because no one's going to let you store that sensitive data in a third-party environment. So kind of belligerent about our approach. We're a little bit different, but it is incredibly powerful.
No, it sounds that way. It sounds exactly what most companies would prescribe to when it comes to being able to do their DevOps operations, especially in this day and age, because I think most of us deal with so many apps now and the interface of cloud and like Salesforce, maybe AWS's portions or ServiceNow and those types of platforms now. Most of our work is moving into or transitioning into the cloud. There were statistics, I think, last year that came out that talked about by 2025, the majority of information will actually, or at least potentially 50 to 60% of it will be in the cloud. So this is directly in the path of, moving into those centric management pieces and then being able to promote it through the API interfaces.
The move to 5G within the telcos is all API, right?
Yeah.
Those guys are great networking guys, but you saw what happened over at T-Mobile, right? They had a huge attack. It was API oriented. They're not necessarily application layer folks. They're going to need to be because that's where the APIs are, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I could see where it was like when Internet of Things came out, potentially they weren't trying to safeguard any of those items. It was always the story of LG refrigerators attacking Oracle Exchange and things like that. So it's come a long ways. And usually the autonomy of the car also having aspects of those algorithms and use of separate devices like that in environments. So I could see where this is a massive contributing factor for support of cybersecurity in the field, and believe that, this is a need. There's a mass need to it. It's integral to understand that your company actually will be able to at least give you backlog in the last 30 days, so you can analyze that type of information and produce, a method or a plan to circumvent the vulnerability and the risk assessment to lower its possibilities. Usually the turnaround process is when you gain those logs, algorithms, things like that. Is there a tool out there? I guess this is what you guys provide as far as tools that will actually analyze that stuff and produce, or services that will produce such a thing. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we do out of the box, right? So we build rules, and those rules help us query that traffic in runtime so that we understand any of those things we're looking for. The rules are, based on help us identify certain types of attacks that are happening. They help us understand, anything that's outside of that OWASP top 10, for example. And then there are custom rules as well that the clients can build, kind of in a no-code environment. There's no real freeware solution that does any of this out there yet. We're obviously considering that concept because we think people need to start thinking about it much more seriously than they are.
Agreed.
But yeah.
It's interesting to understand the impacts to a company when a breach happens. And I bring this up a lot when conversations with my own counterparts, that I think businesses oftentimes do not see cybersecurity as an emphasis, or it's an over elaboration of what's really happening sometimes. So, and then I realize it comes down to cost, efficiencies and cost. The goal of a business is to create money, not use it up as fast as possible. So the simple facts of how businesses work, what would you say that cybersecurity, at least business-wise, what would be some of the context in which promoting growth in business for cybersecurity? This is just one aspect, API and your business currently, but you've had other businesses before. So, what's one of the most important things you would say about building a business from a cybersecurity perspective as a cybersecurity business?
Yeah, so I usually come in when growth has been a problem, regardless of the stage, and I use a process that has worked well for me over the years, and it's 4 things I do right out of the gate, and they help me and the team get a handle on what we have, and then understanding what we don't have, which is also very critical in terms of creating a sales motion that you can be successful with. So what you don't have is equally important in that conversation. So usually what I start to do is I reach out to financial analysts that I may have worked with who have an opinion on the space and get their view on what's working, what's not, where it should be going. Is it an industry? Is it an idea? And then I reach out to the industry analysts, guys that are at different consulting firms that may have a view on it as well. And often they're aligned, but sometimes they have massively divergent views. The third thing that I like to do is I try to go through an intensive competitive research. So everybody around the world, whether they're big or small, I could care less. I want to know what the verticals are that they think they're talking to, right? What use cases are they trying to talk to? What is their pricing model? Does it make sense? Is it overly complicated? I want to know what their sales motion is. Are they working with channels? Are they working with partners? Are they working with a complete direct sales model? I want to know what they think, what their stated value propositions are. And then the last piece I like, if they're grabbing third-party quotes, like they're quoting a Gartner or a Forrester or a Frost & Sullivan or whatever, I want to know what they're focused on, or what they think is the salient point. And then my fourth step is, once I have that, I'm building out our ideal customer profiles. I am building out our pricing strategy. I am building out our competitive advantages, our verticals, and our use cases. And then I'm creating a survey, and I reach out to our buyer types around the world, and I try to make it statistically relevant. So I want like north of 150, somewhere close to 200 respondents from my buyers that help bring all that data together. Who is the right buyer? Does somebody own it? Is there price sensitivity around it? Where is it on their buying? Is their executive team aware that this is potentially an issue, right? And then I bring all of that together. And then part of what I try to get done now is, all right, man, what is our target? Who are we going after? What's our price point that makes the most sense for us to do this? And how do we stand up a revenue generating engine, knowing what we know now to go make that happen, right? So that's kind of my process.
Well, that's awesome. I'd like to pick your brain more. It's interesting to understand how that process works, because I think I'm naive in some of those arenas. And I'd like to learn more about that myself, because I just starting up a business in the last year or two and not quite sure what to do with it. So trying to kind of feed into it, gradually, pivot towards it more or less on working for somebody else, more into an entrepreneurship type profile. So I'm curious about some of those things myself. It sounds like you've got a real good grasp on, potentially how to grow a business significantly. Is there anything, outside of cybersecurity businesses, do you think there's a difference between cybersecurity businesses and other businesses? And if so,
look, the fundamentals are the same. I think you handle things differently. An advantage of software businesses is we have very high gross margins. So if you manage your costs well, you can create a very profitable business, which is different than a manufacturing or a distribution where your margins are much, much smaller. You got greater margin for error. But I think across the board, it doesn't really matter what type of software you're selling. And I came from healthcare, and I've been in other technologies along the way as a board member or an investor or something like that. It's the business fundamentals are what founders often get stuck in. They have a belief in their mind and they want to make that happen, and they keep driving towards it. And they fail to see we need a starting point, right? So what is our MVP, right? Our what's that place where we say, yes, we have something we can sell. Mm-hmm. Let's get that in the market, and then we build from there. And often people spend their money and they never actually get that MVP in users' hands. So it's just those business fundamentals, I think, are the same. I think bigger companies start to forget the importance of measure, because it becomes hard. But I also think the small guys don't know how to do they're not sure. They have a great idea, but they don't know how to make sure that they're making traction, right?
Yeah, that's the thing where I fall into a lot of, because I'm just not business oriented per se when it comes to that. Like, I'm an expert in cybersecurity per se, but not necessarily how to run a business. So I got to learn some of that stuff too, right? So as we go along, I explore things, look into stuff. It's a gradual thing for me. So I guess I'll put more emphasis as the older I get, because my children are finally gone out of the house, and that changes up what my priorities are. So that type of stuff, right?
Yeah, sure does.
Yeah. So there's no, in the company today you have, would you say that, is it, I guess the way the market is it significantly different from the last two companies you've had in the way you trend?
No, but each one, as they grow, adopts a slightly different revenue generating model. Like you might move to the channel here in North America, depending on how attractive or what the uptake is.
Yeah.
Or you might stick with a direct sales model. And one of the things that COVID has helped, and the company Lou mentioned, we were running that, we perfected the inside sales motion to the point where we could have inside salespeople handling transactions of about $100,000 a year in subscription without having the cost of an outside salesperson with all the travel. So that changed that dynamic, and it made that process much more profitable. And I think COVID has helped that along because you couldn't travel. So people needed to do business. They adopted the concepts of Zoom or whatever your video, platform of preference was.
Yeah.
But
that did happen.
you're able to communicate and sell technology, deliver it so that they can pilot it and prove it out, right? All without being on site. So that direct model is lower cost than it was 5 years ago, right? So there's an opportunity to do that. So you build your business. Normally, internationally, what we found is two-tier distribution has worked best. International partners do a better job of taking your product, focusing on it, building a market for it. We find that the US partners already want you to have done that for them and be providing them with warm leads. So it's a slightly different scenario, but we often see a good solid two-tier distribution model for EMEA and the APAC.
Okay. Yeah. So, okay, Patrick, we're going to have to take a break here. So, and we'll be right back after this commercial break. All right.
Blockframe technology offers next-generation blockchain-managed trust and security. Unique non-fungible tokens are used to secure software bills of materials to provide data quality and security for every transaction in your supply chain. Deploy advanced peer-to-peer product security, scale zero trust capability to millions of IoT devices, allow vendor tracking and accountability, and rapidly reset from compromise. Unchangeable, time-sequenced blockchain data provides next-generation security using machine learning trust algorithms and audit analytics. Start securing your supply chain today by contacting Blockframe at www.blockframetech.com.
Okay, welcome back to New Cyber Frontier. I'm your host, Tim Montgomery. I'm talking today with business owner, entrepreneur, cybersecurity specialist, and expertise, API professional, all the above, right, Patrick? Patrick Cole?
And all the above.
We were talking a little bit before the break there about businesses, just the prospects of blending businesses and the uptick in, I guess, how COVID actually impacted the sales processes. And did you see that in the European nations too, as far as doing things different like that?
You had to survive, right? And we saw deals. We were doing $500,000 subscription transactions, and that was happening all over Zoom, or you pick your, like I said, your cloud video platform, but they were all happening remotely because you couldn't travel, but you needed to survive as companies, and companies needed the technology that we had in order to be safe. So you found a way, and it worked. And I do think, like, people going in the office today, I firmly believe that whole COVID period drove a modification in sales process, marketing, sales motion, and customer engagement in general, which I think is helpful.
Yeah, I think we turned it into, because I stayed home, for that 2.5 years. I think today even the government only goes back 1 day or 2 days a week. They're trying to move towards more 3 or 4 days a week. But as far as government, civilian employees and things like that, I think I go on Monday mornings, which to me, I do more work at home. I think more prosperous, I'm more productive. I don't have to worry about the weather. I don't have to worry about, just lots of stuff that says that I am a more productive person. So I think that falls in line with a lot of individuals when it comes to sales. Did you have to adapt any of your processes during that time for actually install?
A lot. Yeah. So almost every aspect of the physical customer engagement had to change. So you had to force your product to be much more intuitive.
Right.
You improve your tech docs and your access to tech docs and knowledge bases. And yeah, I think much of that changed. I think you have to look at it as well. So I'm probably a little bit opposite of you. I agree. I got a lot of work done at home. I do. I don't think everybody is capable of that.
Right. I think so. Yeah.
But I think when you look 5-10 years down the road, I think you're going to see a blip in our innovation cycle because people not able to riff on each other when you're trying to innovate and create next generation products or the next cool thing.
And
when you're not together, you lose a little bit of that over your video conference, right? So I think you're going to see an impact, an innovation impact that's a result of that whole COVID period. And I think I like my brightest minds getting together and yelling at each other and challenging each other and right coming up with new ideas. And I don't see that stuff happening on a video.
No, you're right. I think there's something about being physically located in one place inside of a room. I know when we do in our consulting business, when we do proposal work, that's the best thing to do is kind of put your head down together and work through writing the material, getting it out there so it can be proofed and edited.
Totally. And it doesn't happen well on a video, right?
Yeah, and champion that. You're right. It does not. I mean, there's something to be said about a blackboard with the dry eraser markers.
Yeah, totally.
So yeah, it's definitely something where you can focus on it and every other person in the room with you focuses. So there's a difference there. I do know that everyday work though, it seems like you know, like the I would call it scuttlebutt, right? Around the water fountain, the gossip and chatter and things in the office. That has a tendency to take away from productivity in the workplace. So I think it did support helping training us away from things like that, even though I'm sure lots of things at home take our attention, you know, and especially if you got things moving at home. But it did at least allowed me to really pick things up because I found that I actually multitasked. I don't know if you could call multitask even a word, but I think that it helped me a lot being able to do those things. So, and then it just made me more productive. Plus, you can get to me. I know there's a time frame in which business hours are conducted, but oftentimes because I didn't have to drive home and reset up, that yeah, like 6 o'clock at night, if you needed something to click on or I needed to review something right quick, oftentimes I was there for that. So, yeah, it certainly has changed business and the way business has been conducted. And you're probably right. The innovation probably will have history will show that innovation has dipped a little bit on it because of the inability to kind of, like you said, ripped it out. So what's interesting concepts in I know businesses and we usually don't get a lot of time to talk with one on these interviews, but we're about down to the end of it. So in summary, I would say cybersecurity businesses, they're prospering today pretty good. There's a lot of market out there for all kinds of things, including the software security aspect of it, the stat side of it. Is there any other parts you would say that cybersecurity probably needs to dive into? I mean, as far as businesses that are lacking out there?
Look, it's the great thing about cybersecurity, and you know, my career is probably an example of that. I think part of the elevation today is more cloud-based security platforms, to kind of leveraging what you said, right? You've got, you know, all of the, you know, the new CNAP type stuff that's coming out, the CIEM, the CSPM, the SSPM solutions. You know, cloud security posture, you know, SaaS security posture management, all that I think is starting to come together. And I think companies, it's exploding, so they have to deal with it, and they're not going to want 9 tools to do that. So I think you'll see a bit of a convergence in that sector. Well, I think the API stuff butts up against it reasonably well also. So yeah, I think this cloud and application security is a big part of the future that businesses need to pay attention to. And if you think about the explosion of apps within a business, A, ones that the business needs and uses and supports, but B, the ones that their employees put on their devices, right? That's opening veins in your leg, right? And you need to find a way to manage that and to an acceptable level of risk.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you know, in our conversation, we were talking about market, business, how to build businesses, and you really got a good understanding there. That's for sure. I'm going to pick your brain a little more if you don't mind, call you again somewhere in the mix.
Yeah, you got it, man. Always happy. I love doing this stuff.
Yeah, it sounds like you got a real passion for it. So it sounds like, yeah, the market's it's turning pretty good. So in other words, business will take off because there's a customer set for it. So so it's great talking to you, Patrick.
Likewise.
Yeah, and what was the name of the company again?
We are Resurface Labs based out of Boulder, Colorado.
Boulder, Colorado, great place. And you guys do API security, right?
Correct.
Okay. Well, okay. Well, that's it for us, the New Cyber Frontier. Like I said, I was grateful that you were able to come on and speak with us today about business growth, and cybersecurity in general. It's always a pleasure speaking to other people in our fields and skills. Always a good conversation. Seems like we have. So I'm your host, Tim Montgomery, and my guest, Patrick Clawson here. I guess that's it for us today. Hope everybody enjoys the podcast. Thank you. Have a good day.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of New Cyber Frontier. Remember to get involved. Often we think that someone else will handle privacy and security in the virtual world, but you are the only one truly in command of your virtual fate. Join our mailing list so we can keep you informed of breaking news and new releases. If you have an idea, if you have a question that you would like to hear answered, or if you want to get involved with our efforts, reach out to us at NewCyberFrontier.com. We also encourage you to visit our sponsors' links, as they are the ones that really make this show possible. I want to thank each of you for supporting the show, and we look forward to seeing you back for the next episode of New Cyber Frontier.